Good evening. My name is Deidre Harris Kelly, and I'm one of the co-directors, along with Joanne Bryant Reed of the Bearden Foundation. And I want to welcome you all this evening to our program. We have quite the treat having artist Willie Cole with us this evening. And I have the enviable job of talking with him, but not so easy to get it all into this hour. So I will be just saying some brief remarks, introducing Willie, and please go to his website to get all of the details about his long, wonderful career. So just to begin, the Romeo Bearden Foundation perpetuates the artist, the artistic and intellectual legacies of Romeo Bearden. This artist talk is part of our Cinque Artist program, which is named after the Cinque Gallery, founded by artists Romeo Bearden, Norman Lewis, and Ernest Critchlow in the late 60s. The gallery served as a catalyst for artists and curators of color to exhibit, but also as a place for networking and holding and building community. Our series promotes presentations from professionals and informative, practical information, as well as providing a platform for artists to showcase their work. We encourage adult artists, students, and enthusiasts to share in the discussions in an intimate surrounding. Sort of intimate now with our new way of communicating through Zoom. You can find recordings of our past online programming on our Facebook page and the YouTube page of our community partner, Harlem One Stop. Please visit our website, and to find out more about our legacy projects and programs, including the catalog Resonate that was recently launched and will be published online. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest for the evening, Willie Cole. Willie Cole was born in Somerville, New Jersey, and lives and works in New Jersey still. A self-described perceptual engineer, ecological mechanic, and a transformer. Yes, the kind like toys that transform, kind of. Willie alters perceptions of household objects like steam irons, ironing boards, hair dryers, high heel shoes, and he does this in ingenious ways, shaping them into sculptures, installations, and works on paper. Cole explores his African-American heritage to create works that celebrate African art and culture. He has transformed piles of high heels and old musical instruments into African masks and sculptures, and iron marks into halting pictures of slave ships. We'll hear all about this. His work has been the subject of several one-person museum exhibitions, and too much to name, but I will say MoMA here in New York, the Bronx Museum, Miami Art Museum, Tampa, University of Wyoming Art Museum, Montclair Art Museum, College of Worcester, Harvard University, and some of the exhibitions that Willie has had recently, Bella Figura, which is at the Alexander and Bowdoin New York Gallery, which also represents Willie, I believe, still. Other shows have been There's There, which was curated by Rashad Johnson at Hauser and Wirth in 2021. And in 2022, the contemporary print show of Willie's was at the High Point, the 20 years of High Point editions, which is where the editions were produced, the prints, was on view at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And that ran for 2021 through January 2022. Shows also include those that he did with collaborations, like The Dark Room for Comme des Garçons and Mosaic with Todd's Academy. And of course, Willie's work is in many, many collections. Just to name a few: the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Birmingham Museum of Art, the Bronx Museum, Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago, Cleveland Museum, Dallas Museum, Detroit Institute, and many, many more that you can find on his website. So go to williecole.com for more of that. Because we have so much to cover tonight, and he is one of the most creative, collaborative, and he's also quite prolific. I thought we might get some of it out of the way by showing a video as sort of an introduction, and then that way we can get started with some of the earlier work. But I like this video because it kind of sets us up. I know many of you who know Willie's work may know about him as the shoe artist, but he's much, much more. So I just want to get that out of the way, the shoes, and then we can move on from there. So please play the video.
Those are my interests.
The artist Willie Cole has been working with shoes, a lot, for about 4 years now. That's why his studio in Denville looks like this. His work has been shown around the world, including at his hometown museum, the Newark Museum.
A lot of my inspiration comes from tribal art. This was a face that I made about 3 years ago that I never found a body. Feet, legs, arms, and elbows. And this is the head that will eventually go on there. So it'll be laying kind of like that with his head to the side. My son collected sneakers. He didn't really collect them, but he didn't throw them away, and I didn't force him to. So when he was about 10 years old, he had probably 10 pairs of sneakers. And I started sewing them together to make something, but I felt I needed more of them. So I went to the thrift store. And I walked in the store, I saw women's shoes, more women's shoes than men's shoes. So I decided to use them. So it's basically about availability, abundance, and the unique quality is they have variety and similarity at the same time. I actually did my first shoe piece when I was in Newark, and I think that was maybe around 1992. I made 3 heads and a chair. When I make the furniture, I take the heel off of the shoe so that I can use each shoe slid down on a pipe. So I end up with all these heels left over. And I see each one, especially with the color ones, I see each one as a brush stroke. It's like doing a oil painting in a pointillist style. My father worked for one of the beer factories in Newark in the 50s. I forget which one it was, but we moved to Newark because he had a job at, was it Pabst Blue Ribbon or Budweiser, one of the beer factories there. We moved there in 1958. My parents always sent me to art classes. So I went to Arts High on Saturdays. I went to the museums, to Newark Museum. I went to summer art camps at my grandmother's house in Somerville, New Jersey. Then I went to Arts High School. So I always knew that I was creative, and I thought of myself as an artist. The Newark Museum has been very important to me in my development as an artist. It's the first place I saw African art. It's the first place I saw Tibetan art. It's the first place I saw real art, really. I didn't go to museums as a kid other than the Newark Museum. I think my first museum other than the Newark Museum came when I was in college. They have a piece called Stowage on display now. Stowage is one of my pieces from the steam iron and iron and board days. And it represents a slave ship. There's an illustration, famous illustration, of Brooks' slave ship, which shows the layout of the ship and the layout of the cargo, which were the people. I think that the art presence is very strong in Newark, but I don't know if it's affecting the average person. But I don't know if art ever does, you know. I guess it might eventually bring more art-aware people to the city of Newark and may increase the museum audience as well.
Fabulous. Please welcome Willie Cole. Can you join us? Hey, Willie.
How are you?
Good. All right, let's get started. You said that you've been making art since you were 3 for a long time. I've heard you quoted as saying that, and you've been copying cartoons. And by the way, that's one of the ways I learned how to draw as a kid, drawing the Archie cartoons.
Love art.
And right, you went to museums, and then in college you studied graphic design and illustration, and you've been able to sustain a living solely on your art, from what I understand, through all my research. And let me just say, there's like just so much stuff online. I really enjoyed getting to know your work. So I'll say that. But did you know any professional artists when you were going through college, like actual people who were working and living off of their art? And what did your parents think about the early decision to be an artist?
Right. Well, I should take that part first. My parents are why I majored in graphic design so I could get a job.
Mhm.
That proved not to be as easy as they thought.
Mhm.
In college at School of Visual Arts in the 70s, Chuck Close was there. So I had him as a painting teacher.
Mhm.
He wasn't the Chuck that we knew 20 years later. And I also had Jonathan Borowski for sculpture. Most of the professors at SVA were working professional artists.
Mhm. Mhm.
In my neighborhood, though, there was an artist whose name I don't know, but he had a studio that was a storefront on Lyons Avenue in Newark.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he was an alcoholic, so I never saw him working, but I always saw him sitting in front of his shop, sitting outside.
And you saw his work. Was he a painter
Yes, he
or
was
a
a painter. He was a
sculptor?
painter. He was a figurative
Mhm.
painter.
Mhm. Mhm. And so you said early on you decided to be a professional artist. So what made you decide that?
Well, the journey as a graphic designer and illustrator in the 70s was not an easy journey. The struggle was the same as being a fine artist.
Mhm.
So when I had the opportunity, which was given to me by losing my graphic design job and getting unemployment, I had to take that 1-year scholarship called unemployment and just paint for the year. And after that, I was able to find my first dealer.
Mhm.
I think that was followed by the discovery of Jean-Michel Basquiat on the cover of New York Magazine. Now, I had already been an artist before that, and I was, I didn't have an other job. I was still self-supporting myself as an artist. But when I saw his picture on the cover of that magazine, it was an affirmation that it was possible to do that.
Mhm. 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 Well, why don't we take a look at some of the early work um, of that time,
Okay.
and you walk us through the first couple of slides. The first one are the pastels from the
Okay.
70s.
Yes, in 1978, I was an artist in resident in the theater department at the University of Delaware, and they didn't know I was an artist, a visual artist.
They
Um,
thought you were an actor, right?
yes, but I started doing these pastels that year, and I had been inspired by then because when you go to art school, you come out painting just like your teacher usually.
Mhm.
The main teacher was an illustrator named Gil Stone. He was Playboy magazine's #1 illustrator.
Mhm.
So I decided to change my technique, and uh, I was very inspired by the Japanese woodblock artist Hokusai, and I was very inspired by the theories of pointillism and impressionism.
Mhm.
So that led me to this style with pastels.
Mhm. Mhm. It sort of reminds me of that background that you have there.
Yes, it's the same. This is me during the pandemic, deciding that the world could end any minute now, so I should do everything that I ever dreamed of doing. So I spent the first year of the pandemic turning my pastel technique into a painting technique.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay, well, I'm sure we'll come back to that. I mean, because there's got to be something in between, right? What I found with your work by putting together the slides was that it goes in and out of through the years. Your technique comes back. You're doing some of the things that you did early on. So let's go through some of the early ironworks here.
You haven't seen these in a while. Well, I started out, because I'm a word person, I started out with the word African American, and what does that mean? And that led me to make things out of American objects that looked African.
Huh.
I was just finding things on the streets of Newark. You haven't asked me how I got to the irons. I won't go into that at this moment. But it was all about being what I called an archaeological ethnographic Dadaist.
Mhm.
Archaeological because I would find irons in Newark on the street. Like if there was a fire, I'd go to that location. I'd always find an iron, an ironing board, and a telephone.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
now I say, okay, so if I was an archaeologist and I found a bone and then 20 more bones and I put them together and tell you it's something, tell you it's a dinosaur, you just accept that.
Mhm.
I said, I'll take the irons apart and I'll use all those same parts to reassemble and make something that looked African.
Mhm.
I started
Mhm.
doing that in 1988 while artist in resident at the Studio Museum in Harlem.
Okay.
So the right is a good transitional piece because those parts are not irons. So I was
Mhm.
not into the oneness that I'm into now in my life at that year. But a year later, it was always one object and all of its parts reassembled. And that's perceptual engineering.
Ah, okay. Let's see the next slide.
Yep, these all fit into that same category. The piece at World Rochester is all one iron taken apart. And the piece on the right, American Beauty, is one kind of iron, but maybe four, actually looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 of that same iron
Mhm.
assembled into one piece.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, this is, in a way, this is like a crossover between me as the illustrator and me as the visual artist,
Mhm. Mhm.
contemporary fine artist.
Mhm.
But I wanted to use everything that was related to the iron. So I had some of these irons came in boxes. Go to a thrift store, they have an old iron and it's in an old box with directions and a catalog. So I used the images from that and collaged it
Mhm.
with the actual irons themselves.
Ah, yes. And what is, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This piece from 1992, I had so many different irons, and by 92, I was seeing each scorch as an emblem for a particular tribe. I thought about all the domestic tribes. They would be called the Sunbeams, the Silex, the GEs, the Black and Deckers. So that's why it's domestic idea is showing the various tribes, or basically the various domestic workers and the irons they use.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's the text that many people viewing probably can't read. It's very small. You have the names of the iron makers,
Yeah,
right? Like the Silex, and but the way it's displayed reminds me of like an archaeological dig or anthropological dig where you
yes.
would label things
That was a big
as
interest of
such.
mine, still is to this day, but also in 92, I was reading everything by Joseph Campbell,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
comparative religious studies. And in all of his books, he showed things from various cultures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of filtered into this piece as well. Also, the
Right.
window frame, trying to find another domestic thing to add to the image rather than
Mm-hmm.
buying a frame. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
found with the frame.
Right. And the scorch works, if I can refer to it as that, will come back later.
I
So
should
I
just say
just
before I was Willie, I can't help myself. Before I was Willie Schumacher, I was I was the Iron Man. I made a lot of work out of irons. New York discovered me as the Iron Man.
okay. Okay. That's great. That's great. Okay. And the
Uh,
bicycle man.
no, I never had a title for that one, but I have a Chawari in my collection.
Mhm.
I saw it for many years as like the number 4 or the number 2.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
but it began because when I saw a bicycle, I saw a Chawari. I knew there was a Chawari in the bicycle.
Mhm.
So I had my
Mhm.
assistant take a lot of bikes apart and I played with them for a few days and came up with chawaris. The interesting thing is that the word chawari, a chawari is an antelope deity or being or symbol that the people of the Bambara tribe use, say that it was the animal that taught them farming and agriculture.
Right, right. Wow.
So
Beautiful. They're
and
so elegant.
the word literally means work animal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it just seemed perfect to me.
Yeah, it is perfect.
This is a commission piece from the AGO Museum in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And this shows one view, but there are four faces, there's a face on each side.
Oh, okay. I missed that. So is this when you first started working with shoes formally? Like this is
No, I
2008?
started, I think the video that you started with mentioned the date when I started with shoes.
Mm-hmm.
When I started with shoes, and I made 3 very simple masks, and the main piece from that era was a chair because of Mel DeMarcos.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I made a piece that I called a throne for Imelda. It was made out of high shoes. That was my first piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This came a few years later.
Yeah, yeah.
American Domestic is obviously inspired by the painting that shows a gentleman and his wife or his partner or his friend standing in front of their farm. I think the painting is by Grant Wood.
Yeah, yeah.
And Gordon Parks used it for the inspiration. So I want to be in that same line, so I used it for this piece. I used the Dan mask from Liberia because the first iron I saw it as a Dan mask. So that's why I use that exact same iron.
Yeah, and I noticed that this one was a little out of order in terms of timeline, but I wanted to just remark on how you seem to be doing simultaneously, you're doing lots of different kinds of work, right? So 2D work along with the sculpture.
That's because I want to follow the Picasso model, and that's what he did after a while. Let's say he had a blue period and this period and that period, but at one point, just did whatever he felt. He'd go back and get something, inspiration from the past, bring in something new. So,
Right, right.
Question.
Also, in this wonderful podcast with Phyllis Hollis, the cerebral woman, one of the things that you remarked on that I just found fascinating as an artist is how you separate the materials in your studio. Can you talk a little bit about why you separate the materials?
Yes, well, it actually all began with painting. When I was an illustrator, I was very into Maxfield Parrish, and I read that he only used primary colors. You look at his paintings, you see every color because he uses them in transparent glazes. So I decided that limitation forces creativity. So if I'm in a studio and I make a piece and I need an eyeball, and I'm working with shoes and I need an eyeball, I don't want to look around and see a baseball and say, hey, that'd make a great eye. I want to force myself to envision something made completely out of the material of choice.
All right, that's something to think about. So you would have a room of just shoes and a room just of guitar parts and yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I feel the other way is just a cop-out. It's easy to, to put a baseball in his eyeball or a pool cue or a pool ball.
Right.
So I want to be able to see everything in a single object. And I am working to convince myself that everything is one thing. Anything can be made out of one thing.
Well, you do have a very unique vision, and you also talk about being able to see. And I think I knew what you meant when I first heard you say that you can see in a very unusual way, which is a lot of what artists talk about, being able to see things or see through things, sort of like a twofoldness, to be able to see two things at once. And so you talk about that, and you talk about teaching others to do that, like your kids.
Right. Well, the thing about this kind of work, once you see it, you can never not see it again.
Mm-hmm.
So it only takes me to point it out for somebody to be able to see it and develop that. To me, it's an easy habit to develop once you're exposed to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else I can say about that, but
Yeah, no, that's it. That's it. All right, let's yeah, I wanted to get to this work, which is so important, I think, and we are showing a video from showing a slide from 2012. I believe that's when that series was started, but the slide on the right may be from the installation from 2019. Am I correct?
yes, you
Yeah,
are.
yeah. But I just wanted to show this, and we have a video which I think lays out this work very well. If we could just watch a few minutes of this video.
Okay. I am a big fan of jazz and improvisation, so I'd like to let the materials or the objects lead me. Once that process begins, I'm able to make connections. The first iron that I worked with had nothing to do with my great-grandmother. It was just an iron that looked like an African mask. Of course, I saw the African mask, so I brought that to it based on my own filters of my life at that time. The objects begin to talk to you after a while. And before you know it, you can relate in many ways.
Willie Cole has been working with the motif of the iron, the steam iron, the ironing board, all the paraphernalia of ironing for over 30 years now. It has a presence in his life that goes back even further than that, because when he was a child growing up in Newark, his grandmother and his great-grandmother were both housekeepers, and they frequently asked him to fix their steam irons. The famous diagram of the Brooks slave ship that was published in the late 18th century has become something that he has directly connected to the shape of the ironing board, and therefore connecting the whole world of domestic labor with the long history of enslavement in America and otherwise, thinking about power, thinking about hierarchies, thinking about danger and suffering as well. All of these things run through the iron for him.
For one series of prints, Willie Cole used metal ironing boards to create life-size images. He calls them the beauties. At the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study at Harvard, 24 of them were brought together for a rare exhibition.
Yeah. And when did you decide to actually name them?
Well, after making them, and I recall that my whole inspiration for the work around steam irons and ironing boards came from my great-grandmother, who was a domestic. Mm-hmm. So it just seemed that they should all be named because most of the women have passed on. Yeah. And it's kind of like a memorial. The history of the woman, the clothes that the ironing board has serviced, is all in the board itself. Mm-hmm. So this is my aunt, this is my father's sister, Dot.
Calpurnia, Carolina, Clara Esther, Dot, Emma, Eva May, Fannie Mae,
During an
Ida
opening
Mae,
day public
Jane,
discussion,
Jessie Mae,
Jennifer
Bonnie
and
Mae,
Willie talked
Lily,
more about
Lucy,
naming the
Lulabelle,
beauties.
Mammy, Maddie Lee, Pearl, Queen, Rose, Ruth, Sapphire, Sarah, Savannah, Willie Mae, and Zeddy. Can you talk us through the naming of these prints, what these names mean to you, and why you felt that they should be attached to these prints?
Yes, upon viewing these boards, when you look at a work of art, it talks to you a lot. you don't want to think you know everything when you're making a work of art. So the boards told me what they were about. And one thing that stood out in our conversation was that they were about women who have labored, women who have suffered, women in my family. In my lifetime, I've experienced 5 or 6 generations. I knew my great-grandmother and my great-great-grandmother, and of course all their friends. So the names come from that group of women.
Cole Rogers of the High Point Center for Printmaking in Minneapolis was the master printer and Willie's lead collaborator on the beauties. They started with vintage ironing boards, each different, then flattened them so they could be run through the giant presses.
A whole range of things were used, sledgehammers, hammers, bricks. The initial idea of running a car over it didn't work at all. The rubber tires had no effect whatsoever. At some point, Willie stood on a couple of the boards and we pulled him around the parking lot to add more marks to it, continuously adding pressure as it got thinner and thinner until it was thin enough to actually print from.
The ironing board is something that's connected in a very direct way to the human body. It's a shape that stands in for a human body while someone's ironing something. And so they feel like bodies in the room with you.
This is my great-great-grandmother, Grandma Queen. And it's great to see that this is the board that has the crosses on it because she was very religious. And that wasn't deliberate, it just happened that way.
Can we end it here, Nadal? That's just beautiful. And one of the things that sticks out for me in your work, Willie, is to hear you talking about the importance of, you know, a human connection to these objects. And one of the following slides we have that particularly comes into play with the water bottle art that you're doing. So let's see what is next. I believe Ascension is the next slide. But maybe you can talk a little bit about what you mean by that spirit and how that developed into works like this. Okay, did we lose Willie? Okay.
I muted myself for a minute.
Oh, okay.
What you
That's
can't
okay.
see is that there's a photo in each bottle. And it's a bottle of a Black man in what I call the don't shoot position, like this, in every bottle. So this is about the men and women who have been killed in police custody, basically. It's in the bottles because I was into a bottle period at that time, but also because to me, the bottle is like, it kind of represents death in a lot of ways, the plastic bottle. You know, it's harmful to the environment, but the water inside represents life. So it's kind of a strange pairing of plastic bottles and water. I just took the death part of that. It's like you see a Nigerian sculptor carves a coffin, it looks like a fish. So basically coffins carrying the victims who've been killed.
Is there a little bit of message in the bottle thinking too, maybe, perhaps, putting the pictures, the images are inside the bottle or on top of
inside each bottle. Yeah, I mean, living in this country, I know all the cliches, I know all the truisms. So message in the bottle is a phrase that I'm very aware of, for sure.
And how does it then take the form that we see here? I mean, this is quite large, right?
This is 30 feet diameter.
Is it also considered a chandelier? It has light behind it? No.
Those are the gallery lights there. This was made to be like a canopy. But looking at this photo now, it makes me think of a doily.
Yes.
My great grandmother made doilies.
Yes.
So I have a box of her doilies.
I did too.
And a lot of my techniques come from my grandmother, not I suppose my great grandmother, because my grandmother, I was with her every weekend, and she taught me how to sew, how to knit, how to crochet, things like that. So I'm using a lot of those same techniques with the bottle work. So this is really just woven wires, but there's a bottle on each wire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful.
And this is made the same way, just with a different direction, I guess. He's 30 feet tall. And I don't know how many bottles he is, but this is pretty much a rag doll made out of bottles. And then that rag doll is stuffed with loose bottles.
Ah.
Bottles that are
Okay.
the surface all have wires in them to create shapes.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that gives it body is just stuffing it with loose bottles.
Right. And I saw a video where you were working with some kids, some young people on doing this project.
Yes, yes. This piece, this actual piece was made at a private school here in New Jersey. They had what they call the upper school and the lower school. The name of the school, I think it was the Pingree School.
Mm-hmm.
And the little kids put the holes in the bottles. Like kindergarten to probably first grade. They did all the holes in the bottles. They actually drilled them in. And they also made little puppets where each bottle became an appendage. So the arm is 2 bottles.
Oh,
and
yeah.
this was 1 bottle. So that was their experience. But then the bottles that they put the holes in, I took those to the upper school, which was the high school kids, and we made the larger body with that.
Right. And it was sort of a beaded kind of technique. It seemed like 2 holes on either side of the bottle, and then you string it through. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The concept came from, I bought a beaded chicken in South Africa. And I said, this is just a wire sculpture with beads on it. So this is a wire sculpture with bottles on it.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Beautiful.
This piece was in that video you showed also. It was established because I made the 3 sections and I would change it every day to whether head be upright or head laying down or whatever. And in this year, I think maybe in, I don't know, 2007, I decided to make it a permanent piece. And some years later, I decided to cast it in bronze and enlarge it. So the one on the right is the enlargement. It's at the Newark Museum, and it's downtown Atlanta, Georgia, and it's at the San Antonio Museum. I have a lot of pictures in my head, just things I collect over the years. And I've studied a lot of African art. One of my best friends was an African art dealer. And I can go to his studio and I can actually touch the work, unlike a museum. People let me put on the mask or blow the ivory horn. So that inspired this whole Africanness in my art, just the fact I can have a personal connection with the work.
Right.
So studies of this piece are from the Chagwe, who are a group of people who were living in Angola. I was in Angola a few months ago, and my host pointed out that symbol of a seated thinker is one of their national symbols.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah. So that was the first bronze shoe piece. So of course I had to continue to do it again and again.
Because they're ingenious. They're beautiful.
And the one on the left there is Shinufu. It's just, this is where the transformer stuff comes in, Now I know how to do this.
Yeah.
So I don't have to think about it or plan. I just got to play every day.
Right.
So I'm in the studio and I say, okay, I only want to work with black shoes today. I don't want to tip by themselves, and I just spend a day playing with it and see what comes up. It's called Shunufu because aesthetically, at least in terms of position, it reminded me of the Sunufu people. And the one on the right is a mother and child, only because mother and child, to my awareness, is I guess they can call it a classical icon in European art.
Yeah.
Renaissance art, mother and child. And because there's a women's shoes, most of the shoe pieces are about women, are named after women. The challenge that I had with Mother and Child, and I have probably 10 pieces called Mother and Child. I admit are different materials. But with this shoe piece, the child was the most challenging part to make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm still challenged by that. I haven't made one of these in a few years, but I think about that little kid on the back.
What about the translation from the shoes that are worn and scuffed at the bottom and the leather might be torn to bronze, which must have a sort of over like a patina that then kind of levels the surface in a way? Do you have any feelings about that?
Well, making them in bronze was almost, in some ways, a business decision. People have reactions to the shoes sometimes that I don't really agree with, like, oh, those shoes are so dirty, blah, 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 blah.
They say that? Okay.
Yeah, I've heard people say that. And then I also had the awareness of bronze baby shoes, so it seemed almost natural to make them out of bronze.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the scuffs and wear and tear on objects a lot. So I do have a lot of shoe pieces that are not cast in bronze.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I started doing them in bronze to combat the idea of shoes being dirty,
Yeah.
and also to jump off of the concept of bronze baby shoes.
Yeah. 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 Well, the next slide is some of the classical pieces, the masks. And
Yes.
this is from a fairly recent show, 2019 at the gallery.
Yeah, this was just before the pandemic, this show. And this was almost like a personal challenge for me. I would make one mask a night that year.
Wow.
As you saw in the video, first video, I put it together each night. I put one together with just rubber bands to hold it in place so I could look at it.
Right.
Next night, I would make it permanent and start a new one.
Oh.
I did that for about a year.
And the next slide shows some folks interacting with the masks. I thought was fun.
Yes, and I was inspired by the idea that we live in the age of the selfie. So if I put these masks on posts, people can interact with them. And I like the results of that very much. That's me in the middle.
Oh, okay. Are those just naturally silver shoes, or did you paint?
No, I don't paint the objects at all because I'm into the history of the object.
Okay. Okay.
They're all right out of the box or right off the shelf.
Okay. We're going to have to run through just a couple of slides because I want to get to some of your collaborations.
Yeah,
but let's not go so fast. But okay, yes.
All Sales Final was commissioned by one of my collectors in Birmingham, Alabama, after they found a Clotilda. As you all may know, the Clotilda was the last slave ship to come to the United States. It came after the importation of slaves had already been abolished in the US, but some guy, so many people do, think he can break the laws and do whatever he wants. So the piece shows, the composition is based on the Alabama crest. But the Alabama crest, of course, they had like the Mayflower up top. And it had the European countries all in the middle, but the what do you call it? The captured people on the Clotilda were all from Benin. So I made it the Benin flag instead. With the US flag there in the middle. And that is the Clotilda as opposed to the Mayflower. And I wish I could remember that translation from the text, but it's something like, we have the right to defend ourselves. And defend, yes.
Do you take commissions a lot for prints? And
I've had commissions. The piece that was based on the Grant Wood was a commission also from the David Driscoll Center.
Okay.
So yes, I do commissions. I do commissions. Yes.
You do. Okay. All right. Let's this is a return to an earlier technique, the
Yes.
scorching.
Yes.
Yeah.
This has to do with George Floyd and everybody else who had been eliminated by police. And the main inspiration, other than the current events, was that I had a review in the Times years ago with scorches, and the writers said that scorches represent the skin tones of Black people. And that had never occurred to me. But when he said that, I started calling myself Willie the Scorch. If I was in the mafia, that would be my name, Willie the Scorch. So each scorch represents a Black person, male or female.
Hey,
And
wow.
their names written under each one. This is 8 feet by 8 feet. There are 88 scorches there.
Okay.
And I have 3 of them, so I actually have more than 88 victims documented.
Right, right. Okay, and they talked a little bit about this in the video we saw earlier. I just love the way those line up. Yeah. Okay.
This has to do with just sometimes what you do becomes an icon, and you're expected to do it again and again. I've had that with a few bodies of work, dealers requesting, can you do something like that? Or can you? So I had one ironing board that came back to my studio for repair. One of the first ones I ever made. So since the irons were hot, I said, just make some more.
That's great. That's great. All right. We're kind of getting into the collaborations. I'm thinking about the Comme des Garçons one with the headdress. If we can see that next slide. Yeah, this is exciting. This is interesting.
Yeah, this is my friend Michelle Ely. She's a world famous fashion model. She was not in the Comme des Garçons show, but she saw the show and she commissioned me to make a shoe hat for her. I made 2 for her, and she used them in one of her other jobs as a model. I work with Rhea Kubacabo from Comme des Garçons, and she requested that I make something out of shoes that go on the model's head. She called them headpieces.
Oh, we can look at the next slide. We'll see that on the left.
Yeah. So you see the models all wearing the headpieces. The clothes all have my shoe work on them as textile patterns as well.
Yeah. And then a collaborator with another.
I made these headpieces much bigger.
Yeah.
These models are like, skinny little boys. And it was just too much. They said heavy on their heads. So the designer asked me to make them out of no more than 5 shoes each.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But even in my studio now, I have some of the ones I made that are much bigger still.
You were inspired.
Yeah, yes. Next to that, if you want to go back, I don't know if you do.
Yeah, just real quickly. Yeah.
That collaboration with Armando Cabral, who's also a fashion model, but he opened a store near Rockefeller Center, shoe store, and he works there as a shoe designer. He asked me to make something out of his product.
Yes.
For his window. So that's where those figures are down there. And we also made some clothing together, some shirts that'll be coming out sometime in the next month or so.
And I see the background. There is your painted background. Fabulous. Fabulous. Okay. What I will say though is these were not your earliest collaborations with companies, because I saw one for Kohler, the faucet company.
Right, but see, Kohler has an art center. So they bring artists there all the time to work with their materials.
Okay, all right, yeah. But that was back in 2000, I think?
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It would have been 2000. And this project here with Todd's Academy, Todd's participates in an event in Milan every year. It's called Salon de Mobile. And all the designers, merchants, they feature art in their stores at that time.
Right.
along, I think it's the Napoleon Avenue, Avenue de Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
So Todd chose me. So I go to that factory for 10 days and I make 5 works of art. And it was a marathon, but it taught me that I'm still a young man.
It looks awesome. So you have a table and a vase with flowers in it on the
Yeah,
left?
the vase was a last minute throw in. Actually made that vase in like 2 hours because they had the table and they said, we need something to sit on the table. So, using pocketbook parts, I use the shoe form as the base of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything out of that is pretty much from pocketbook handles and straps, and then sandals to make the pebbles on top.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And now, will they do anything with this furniture?
Well, they have an art
cool.
collection themselves.
Uh-huh.
That year that this was done in 2021, they tore these pieces at Miami Basel.
Mm-hmm.
We had a big celebration there that I was invited to, of course.
That's fabulous. Oh, yes, I wanted to make sure that we look at some of these, another kind of collaboration, right, with Yamaha?
Yes, yes. I was able to collaborate with Yamaha for my show in 2021, but this piece is not a Yamaha product.
Uh-oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. I had a piano, my daughter took piano lessons, so I had a piano here, for 12 years, maybe 15 years. And that room where it was is now my studio in this house. And the piano was taking up too much space.
Mm-hmm.
I took it apart and turned it into a bird.
Whoa.
Yep. So that's how.
And did that prep you then for the next slide for the work you did do with Yamaha?
Not really, because I don't need to be prepped. This stuff is like breathing to me. So
Right.
no. Once I got the guitars from Yamaha, I thought about, because I play the guitar, so I thought about what the guitar means to me, how it's been seen in history and art throughout the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Piece on the right is definitely, I was thinking about minstrel or stereotypical looking broken down Southern blues players.
Yeah.
He's got so his front man refers to his teeth as well, as well as him being in front of the band.
I love that.
One on the left, I made one right-handed one and one left-handed one because I'm left-handed.
Ah, yes, I did see that. I didn't clip both of them.
There's
but
another piece that I don't know if you have it here, but it's a wheel of guitars that plays itself.
Oh,
In
no.
making that wheel, I had to cut off the sides of the guitar.
Uh-huh.
That piece is made from all the cut off parts.
Okay, can folks see that on your website? Just a shout out for your
I think
website?
so. Yes.
What is it called?
WillieCole.com.
But what is that piece called?
What is that piece called? I don't even.
Wheel? Is it clock or wheel or something? I think I saw it. Yeah.
I had to forget the titles.
Oh, all right. We're good. We are now. We now have to give our audience a chance to get in on this conversation, even though I'm really, really enjoying it, and we have queued up another video, but I think we're not going to have time for that. I prefer that we open it up for Q&A. But the slide that Nadal has up right now, can you just say a few more words about that?
Yes.
Another water bottle piece.
Yes. I started making chandeliers out of water bottles about 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Most were conical chandeliers. But in this opportunity, which happened for me at Express Newark, which is kind of a community makerspace in Newark in the Haynes building, which was a department store that had been empty and abandoned for many years, I decided to use a different composition. And this is it. This is 10 feet diameter and it's 10 feet long. And it came about because it desired to make chandeliers that could fold up and transport easy. The conical ones don't fold up, but this one, I'm able to collapse it and transport it easily.
Right. And where does this live? Is it permanently installed?
Yes, this is permanently installed in the Haynes building in Newark.
Mm-hmm.
The first floor is Whole Foods and some fancy restaurants and computer stores, and this is in the lobby.
So there's public access to it.
Yes, definitely. And if you go up the steps and make a right, there's another chandelier.
Oh.
That's where Express Newark is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joint project between the city of Newark and Rutgers University, where I'm currently artist in resident.
Oh, fabulous.
If you go up to the third floor, you'll see my studio and a lot more.
Is your studio open for the public to visit?
Well, my studio is what was normally a gallery in that building.
Mm-hmm.
So it's glass. You can walk by and look right in.
Ooh.
But they've asked me to allow people to come in. So yes, it's open to the public.
Maybe for limited hours or something.
If you call ahead, I could try to meet you there because you're just not available unless I'm there.
Right.
Unless someone's giving a tour. And they do give tours and I'm not there sometimes. But you're open.
All right, we have some questions, but thank you so much for entertaining my questions. And, I just feel I'm fangirling a little bit because you're just an artist that I so admire. So I thank you for subjecting you to all of those slides too.
Well, thank you for the journey through my past.
Yeah. All right. So we have a question from James Sokol, who says you're also a musician, which I was going to ask you about. Talk about your love of music.
I can say this. I couldn't say this for many years, that I love music more than I love visual arts. And my parents were into music a lot. My dad would have jam sessions at our house, like blues with guitars and harmonicas. He would record his friends playing. And we had a major record collection. I say to people that where most people would have a picture of Jesus Christ or Martin Luther King on their walls, when I was a kid, we had a picture of James Brown on the wall. So very, very much into music. And as an adult, I've always had a piano in my studio. Which I played by ear for many years. But to me, music is what I call the highest calling in creative endeavors, because the first sense that develops in an infant is a sense of sound, before sight. So sound comes before sight. So music, and plus the whole universe is based on vibrations. And music, sound is a vibration. So
that's
it's
fabulous.
Beautiful.
Well, that must have been fun. One that we didn't show is the piece you did with the saxophones at the airport, where you created birds and beautiful.
Yeah.
Did that have a sound component?
It did not, because the airport, we talked about it, but the airports are so noisy that I said, I don't want to blow my budget on making sounds for it. And they can hear them.
Right. Yeah. Oh, here's the picture of it. Yeah.
There's a 12 birds made out of saxophones. And the formula was Charlie Parker, born in Kansas City. His nickname was Bird.
Yes.
Those three things added together led to birds made out of saxophones, alto saxophones.
And what is the name of this series or installation?
Ornithology.
Right.
That was Charlie Parker's, one of his great tunes that I love, Ornithology.
Yeah, thank you. This message comes from Grace. Willie, who are your favorite contemporary artists? Well, there's two questions from Grace. Who are your favorite contemporary artists? And to clarify, what is Kohler Academy?
Kohler Academy.
That's where Kohler Company asked artists to come in.
Right.
Yeah.
Kohler, the nation's oldest and largest manufacturer of bathroom fixtures. They have a residency program where they invite artists to come and stay for up to 3 months to make things out of their products. So Kohler is.
Yeah.
I can't say I have a favorite artist. I don't really play the games of favorites in my life.
Okay.
Everybody makes something I like once in a while, so I don't really have a favorite. I say my favorite artist is probably God.
Not Romer Bearden. No, just playing.
Chance to say the right thing.
That's okay. Okay, we have a message from Shaka. Shaka Mirik is one of our Romeo Bearden Museum fellows from the St. Louis Museum. I say "are" because we embrace them, but it's really a program, a wonderful, wonderful program that the St. Louis Museum has, and they bring in young people to become museum professionals, and they're just really, sending them out in the world, and it's wonderful. They come to New York for a short little residency. And so Shaka wanted to ask if you could speak specifically about a piece that's in the St. Louis Art Museum. She says, "Thank you. I marvel at your research and commitment to historical references to the continent. Your catalog is breathtaking. I'm sorry, your catalog is breathing African-American art lesson, an African-American art lesson. I'm sorry, African art history lesson." And I'm putting my own thing in there, calling it breathtaking. Okay, and can you talk about what is the title of the piece, Shaka? It's Man, Mask, Spirit, which I think was shown in one of the videos.
Yes.
You talking about that work. Yeah.
Yes. I forget the years that it happened, but I was very aware of Cindy Sherman. I was on board with her at Artist Space. Very aware of Matthew Barney. He and I had shows in neighboring galleries. So that made me want to start using my own image in the work. So that's how I got there.
Right.
So Man is the first panel, and that just means obviously a man.
Yes.
Spirit obviously means spirit, and mask means mask. The whole piece, the spirit part is the scorch, because the evidence of the power of the iron is the scorch. So that's the spirit. The mask is covering the face of a man. That's my face now upside down there. Because when you are, like, say, in a ceremony and you're possessed by the gods, your whole world is suddenly upside down. So that's that. And as the man, I'm wearing the scarification from the spirit, from that Proctor Silex spirit. So that's what it means.
The Proctor Silex spirit and tribe. You've said that. Do you get any pushback on that? Do you any people saying that I don't know, it seems funny to me. It makes me laugh, but I know that you're very serious about it.
Right. I'm as serious as art is, I should say. I mean, it's not a belief system that I walk with day to day, but it is the result of this inspiration. And a lot of that thinking came from a speech by Malcolm X, which talks about the house Negro and the field Negro. So I started to define what is a house Negro, what's a field Negro, and the house Negro is the domestic servant. And Malcolm says the house Negro loves the master more than the master loves himself. So I said, okay, so if there's a revolt on the plantation, what would the house Negro do? What would his weapons be? So the iron board would be his shield. And because the iron is a major tool that your survival depends on, you become a worshiper of the iron. That just elevated to this place of man, spirit, mask, or even what I call the cult of the domestic.
Yes. Oh gosh, we have about just a little bit more time. We're over already, but Nadal is our producer is going to let us go a little bit longer. I think we have a message from Gail Wright, who I think I know. In light of commitment to the visual and auditorial art world, this is to invite you to an upcoming concert featuring Lonnie Holly. I don't know. Okay,
I know
Gail.
Lonnie.
All right, send that to us in the chat, Gail. And Helen Hawley says, when we were showing your bottle sculptures at the Flynn Gallery in 2018, you shared with us a funny story about how people would often drop donations of water bottles and piles of shoes at your front door.
Yes.
What new objects are you collecting, or do you wish to be donated to your studio door?
Well, currently I'm not collecting anything because I have so many collections. I got to get a bigger space to continue to collect things.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't do conscious collecting. Something has to find me, and then I just start collecting that. I have been doing the water bottles, like I said, for 7 or 8 years. I have a shipping container filled with water bottles. I got a barn filled with high heel shoes. I got a garage filled with steam irons.
You mean
And
you don't have women? You don't have women trying to throw their high heel shoes at you?
well, not throw, but I received donations.
I mean, yeah, give them to you. Yeah.
Yes.
Give- All right, we have lots of comments, wonderful things that folks are saying in the chat, and that'll be preserved for Willie to read at another time. One person, I think I saw something here that wasn't a question, but yeah, okay. We got lots of also lots of the posting of your videos. So the videos that we showed, so that folks can go and find those and watch them in their entirety.
They can find a lot of videos on YouTube.
Yeah. And I just want to thank you, Willie, for joining us and giving of your time and your spirit, and for inspiring us with your artwork. Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to say to us?
Well, I want to say thank you too, of course, to you and to the Bearden family and foundation. I recently purchased a Bearden.
Oh, okay. We need to know that for our catalog resume. Okay.
So no, it's just it's good to be part of that group of artists, connected to that group of artists, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you all for joining in. And please continue to send your messages, and we will preserve them. And I want to thank Nadal Kanari, who's our producer, and Joanne Bryant-Reed and Ron, who are our backstage help, and all of the folks at the Harlem One Stop, and particularly to you, Willie, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we'll see you soon. Okay, we're all going to show up at your studio in Newark.
I don't mind.
and look through the window.
Come on down.
Come on down.
Bring a bottle of water with you, though.
Yeah.
That studio is just for water bottles.
Right. And capturing the spirit and talking about death at the same time. That's so genius, really, to think about that way. All right, everyone. Thank you again. And we'll see you soon.
All right.
This is the comment I was looking for.